I'd make another video today. Wasn't going to, but I was using an app called LinkedIn, and which I don't know how to describe it really. It's sort of a business social media app where people post things, and you can find a job or tell people you've got a new job, or I don't know. It's just anyway. There was a post on there from somebody I don't know who said basically. Um, he had some realizations at the weekend. He wasn't spending enough time with his wife and his two-year-old daughter and two-year-old granddaughter, which is pretty amazing, really, that that can happen. But yeah, I thought, wow. And one of the things he said was that he'd realised that if he was happy, then his wife would be happy, and his children and grandchildren would be happy. And I think, yeah, that's obviously a concept that a lot of people sign on to. And I think at one time in my life, I would have told you the same. Yeah, if I'm happy, I can make everybody else happy. But realised that that isn't the case. Um, this concept that you can make other people happy isn't right. It's a concept that people, therefore, you can agree with it or disagree with it, as Ramesh would say. Anything that can be agreed with or disagreed with is a concept. And yeah, I just thought I would jump on and sort of explain a few things. Ramesh would say that I cannot find happiness in the flow of life. And he would then go on to explain that if we make things outside of ourselves, whether that's other people, events, just happenings outside of ourselves, really, to make us happy. For instance, as I was talking about in the last video, I think it was about the weather. But in this country, in England, if it's raining, people tend to not like the rain. It's a bad thing. And some people become very depressed at the weather. So, on that basis, if it's sunny, then it's a sunny day, I am happy. If it's a wet, overcast day, I'm unhappy. So, if you rely on the weather to, if you like, support your emotional state, then you're going to be in trouble. And equally, this can be said for anything outside of ourselves, because we're all searching for happiness, Ramesh would say. And everything outside of ourselves, and even including our bodies, everything is subject to change. As the Buddha would say, whatever appears will disappear. Everything is impermanent. All structures are impermanent. And that includes buildings, infrastructure. I was walking in a beautiful parkland that we have near my house. It's like a big sort of what they call a meadow with huge oak trees in them. And I was going to take a photograph. These beautiful oak trees that are probably 500 or 600 years old, and they're all dying. And there was one that had been blown over by the winds we had a few months ago. this whole thing was dead and uprooted, and it's been there for 600 years. So in the same way, if you relied on an oak tree to always be there to make you happy, to give you a sense of happiness, which I think is often mistaken for pleasure, then you're in trouble, because whatever appears will disappear eventually. Then it's Ramesh would just sort of recommend sometimes that we just sit and contemplate this. What has appeared in our lives and how it's disappeared. And I cannot find happiness in the flow of life. And relying on things outside of ourselves, whether it be a lovely house or apartment, or more importantly, people in your lives, whether it be a loved parent or grandparent or friend or wife or husband or boyfriend or girlfriend, that when they eventually leave, well, that's, they sadly die, or they just up sticks and leave the relationship, or you can't afford to pay the mortgage on your lovely house and it's repossessed, or the business that's taken you decades to build up, through no fault of your own, it's just an event happening, it becomes insolvent. You don't have a business anymore, and you're no longer the proprietor or managing director or chairman anymore. And this can lead to considerable unhappiness and suffering. And I've experienced this in my own life. I've had the best of things and the worst of things. Had the best of things appear, and then having to watch them disappear. Ramesh would say it's just the human condition. It's the flow of life. It's your destiny playing out. So, what Ramesh would say is, because Ramesh Balsekar was a non-Advaita teacher, which means not two, one. Everything's one. And he used to give talks, what are called satsangs, and people would visit him. He used to have them mostly in his apartment in Bombay. You could get quite a few people in there. And Ramesh would just sit there and talk and speak. And people would come and see Ramesh. This is the days really before the internet, I guess, where they would just go, this is the guy to go and see, because he's got some information that may help you in your seeking. And it's what is known as spiritual seekers, people who are seeking what they call enlightenment or self-realization, and often Ramesh would say, "Oh, are you new? What can you tell me your name and where you're from?" And they would say, Jim from, I don't know, New Orleans or whatever. And Ramesh would say, "And can I ask why you're here?" And they would say, I've been seeking, and I've not really found the answer. I'm seeking enlightenment, or this idea of once you become self-realized or enlightened, that life becomes blissful, and you live in some sort of I don't know, state of eternal bliss, that you're always happy. And Ramesh would say, "Oh, that's very interesting. And can I ask how long you've been on this quest? How long have you been seeking this enlightenment, or whatever you call it? What is it you're really looking for? Can you tell me?" And very often they couldn't. They would come up with all sorts of concepts that they'd read or heard or seen. And he would say, "Yeah, I understand, because I went on a similar seeking myself." He had a family guru when he was a younger man. He asked this guru, because they have that in India. I don't think we really got any equivalents in the West, really. We might have a family, I don't know, vicar or pastor, or we don't really have sort of gurus, really, until recently. Anyway, he asked his guru, "Guruji, what will I get when I am enlightened?" And the family guru said to him, "You will find out when you become enlightened." Which, to be honest, Ramesh said, "Oh God, this is just ridiculous," and he just stopped going. He just wouldn't go. Anyway, when he retired at 60, he started on his personal quest. But there's just some background. But what he would say to these seekers, from Jim from, did I say New York or New Orleans, whatever? Ramesh would often forget their name and where they're from. He was very funny, but he was always, said, "I'm sorry, I'm getting old now, can't remember." But he would say, "Well, shall I tell you what I think what you're seeking?" And of course they say, "Yeah." He said, "What I think you're seeking is happiness, to be happy rather than unhappy. Am I right?" And they'd say, "Yeah, I think that's probably it." He said, "Well, if I think my teachings, if you listen for long enough, or it could happen immediately, it's all in God's hands. It's through the grace of God, or the source, or the one cosmic law, that you may reach this point, from a point of understanding that you can have peace of mind in daily living. And this peace of mind comes from understanding how life works." And basically, one of the tenets of the teaching is whatever happens, you can remain peaceful. It's inner peace. Because whatever happens, there's this realization that we have, nobody has any control on what happens outside of themselves. We don't even have any control of what happens internally, apart from this awareness that whatever happens, I am peaceful, because I haven't got any control over it. Now, I'm not to say that emotions don't show up. When somebody dies, you're not going to be sad. When a pet is injured, or a child is unwell, that you're not going to think, to be sad or concerned, or we don't become some sort of automaton, but we can, if you like, tolerate that sadness. We can tolerate that grief. We can tolerate the suffering of seeing a child suffer. And all we can do is our best, just do what we think and feel like doing in order to alleviate that child's suffering. Yeah. So, yeah, Ramesh would say, I cannot find my happiness in the flow of life, because life is pleasure followed by pain. Pleasure followed by pain. And I'll give you an example of this. Now, I'm not saying that don't enjoy life. I was talking to my eldest son, who, I don't know, I'm sort of biased, really. I just think he and his younger brother are just two of the most amazing young men I've ever known. And I'm not claiming anything. They're just two human beings who happen to be my biological sons. And I'm very, if you like, blessed to have them in my life, and being able to father them from when I was there at both their births. My first son's birth was perfect. He just sort of popped out. Well, a bit more than popped out. He did sting a bit, my wife said. My wife at the time, his mum. But no, it was perfect. It was wonderful. The second one, my youngest son, it was just horrendous. He sort of got stuck, and at one point I was terrified. I don't mind telling you. This sort of lovely, bouncy, I can describe her as a midwife. She was lovely, sort of middle-aged woman, very caring and experienced, and she was saying to my wife, no, come on, dear, you've got to, don't lose it, just breathe and push, breathe. Well, she was breathing and pushing at this, and he was stuck. And I remember saying to her, look, this ain't looking good, is it? And she said, no, it's not. She said, hold your wife's hand. She said, I won't say my wife's. Just hang on a minute. And she went over to, there's like one of these phones on the wall, and she dialed a number. I can see it now. She held this phone, and she said into the phone, it's always, I'm in room 254. The girl giving birth is in awful complications. Get the fuck up here now. Put the phone down. And within about, I don't know, and it seemed like a minute, this guy appeared, who was the consultant obstetrician for the hospital, the main man. And he came in, he said, right, blah, blah, blah. And they did something to me. And James was born, thank goodness. And yeah, it was, but it wasn't a wonderful experience. And I didn't know what I know now, so I wasn't peaceful inside at all. I just thought, this is horrendous. But yeah, that lovely lady, she was, hold on there. She knew what to do. She knew what to do because of her life experience. She was amazing. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, I've gone off the track a bit. Hope, but yeah, I was talking to my eldest son, and he's he's Richard. I'm saying both their names now. I hope they don't mind. Who cares? You know? Rich is a life enthusiast, as is his younger brother, but in different ways. Now, Richard likes going to watch horse racing, and he's been up to the Cheltenham Festival yesterday with his sort of childhood friend. They've been friends since they were 10, and he's an amazing guy as well, Richard's best friend. They really look after each other and look out for each other. Anyway, I was saying to Richard, you know, he's sort of sending messages to me and my youngest son about, and I said, oh, are you at work or what? He said, no, I'm in bed with a hangover. And I said, oh, just I hope you feel better soon. But I think you know, he'd be squared off with that. Like yesterday was immense pleasure. They actually had a few bets that came off, and he and his friend were quite a few quid up, a few pounds up, you know, and they like a drink, and obviously they drunk too much because he's in bed with a hangover today. But there it is. Life is pleasure and pain, pleasure and pain. Yesterday at the horse racing, oh, our horse has won, great, let's have another pint of Guinness or whatever they were drinking, and had a whale of a time. God knows where they ended up, but they've had a good time. And today they pay the price. He's paying the price. He's got a hangover, but this too shall pass. You know, I don't know what he does. Have a couple of paracetamol. He's a very practical guy. A couple of paracetamols. Drink some. Always full of advice, really. In the old days, I don't bother now unless they ask me. Have some orange juice. I used to drink Coca-Cola. I always found that helped with a hangover, but I don't get them now because I don't drink. I don't overindulge. I like a drink. I like a glass of lager or a glass of wine, but I rarely overindulge. Which is, I don't know. I'm telling you that, so it matters anyway. So yeah, pleasure and pain. Life is pleasure and pain, pleasure and pain, pleasure and pain. But whatever is happening is happening. Just allow it, and this is where the peace of mind comes from. That whatever happens, happens, and whatever you do, you do. And don't have any sort of guilt or shame, because whatever you do, you're always going to do. Doesn't mean because you've done something, you can't learn from that, update your conditioning, as Ramesh would say, and not do it again. You know, it's like anything. You know, you can say to a child as much as like, look, don't touch that because it's hot and it'll burn you. You know, 9 times out of 10, the child will, you know, put their hand on the fire and burn it, or and you don't do it again, do you? Well, not if you can help it. So, yeah, that was it's this sort of peace of mind comes from. Now, this is a very difficult concept for most people. Ramesh would always say at the beginning of talks, I want you to just listen. And I don't mean listen to every word and try and just listen to what he was saying. And one day, with the grace of God, because either it's going to happen or it's not going to happen, this information can become part of your up-to-date conditioning, and you can find peace of mind in daily living. And what he would say is that we are not the doer. That all we are like actors on a stage. We're just acting out a script that's been written by the source or God or cosmic law, whatever you want to call it. It's just life is just like a film. It's all in the can, Ramesh would say. God or the source or cosmic writes the script, operates the cameras, plays all the parts, plays all the props, and whatever happens, happens. People will do what they do. And one of his favourite sayings was, events happen, deeds are done, consequences happen, but there is no individual doer thereof. Which means we just do what we're always going to do, which is the result of our genetic makeup and our up-to-date conditioning, both of which are out of our control, if you think about it. They're both the will of the source, where we're born, to what parents, into what socio-economic group, which country. And then once we're born, we don't decide what religion we're brought up in, or we're not brought up in a religion, or whether we're born into a rich family, a middle-class family, a destitute family. These are not in our control. So, yeah. And this applies to not only to us, but to everybody else. So that's where Ramesh would say the peace of mind, because whatever somebody does, whether it's to our preference or not, they were always going to do that. Now, that's not to say that that people will not, society will either reward an action or it will disapprove of an action and punish you. So if somebody kills somebody else, they'll be taken to court, put in front of a judge, the evidence presented, and they could be sent to prison. But they were always going to kill that person. But it doesn't absolve you of the, society holding you responsible for it. And of course, rightly so, because we just couldn't operate as a human race if everybody just went around killing other people and taking their goods and whatever. But as Ramesh would say, very often someone can commit a murder and, then they're never caught. Or if they're caught, they're taken to the courthouse, and they are prosecuted, and there is insufficient evidence, and the judge has to let them go. So, and that's what Ramesh would say, just whatever you decide to do, do it, but don't be attached to the outcome. And I've talked about this in a previous video about choices and outcomes. That we either make a choice, do something, you either get what you want, you get less than what you want, sometimes you get more than what you want, and sometimes you get an outcome that you would never, ever, ever, ever want. So there you are. So I cannot find my happiness in the flow of life. But this sort of enlightenment, or whatever, Ramesh would say, it's not a certifiable event, but at some stage, like he did, you come to the understanding that whatever happens is going to happen. And regardless of what people may tell you or what you may think, his teacher was Nisargadatta Maharaj. And Nisargadatta Maharaj, I might get the words not quite right, but what Nisargadatta Maharaj would say was, if something's going to happen, it will happen. And if something is not going to happen, it will not happen, despite any force on earth. everything happens in accordance with cosmic law or God's will. If it's not dictated by cosmic law or God's will, then it won't happen. And he would say, if you found your way to this satsang in his apartment in Bombay, Ramesh would say, it's God's will that you're here. And people would say, well, I could have not come. He said, well, yeah, but the fact is you're here. And, all sorts of, people like the guy from, what did I say, Jim from New Orleans? He'd say to Jim, well, look, first of all, something must have happened for you to say, I'm going to go and see Ramesh in Bombay, or something along the way, that you're here. And, you had to buy a ticket. You had to have the money to buy the ticket. You bought the ticket. You got on the plane. It didn't crash on the way over here. You didn't have a heart attack or get lost or get on the wrong airplane. Anything could happen. But it all happens so that you're here. And people would say, oh, yeah, I get that. Like you're watching this video now. You're always going to watch this video to this point. A lot of people might have got bored but it's just that your destiny to watch this video this far for whatever reasons. I don't know, you was on YouTube, you did a search, Ramesh Balsekar or happiness, and this popped up and you clicked on it and you're watching it. All out of your control. Anyway, thanks for watching. If you could, you got to say this. If you could subscribe, that would help me and the channel. And if you could like this video, click on the thumbs up button. If you'd like to ask me a question, please put it below in the comments, and I'll answer all questions. Yeah, there you go. Thanks very much.